who's our MP Law advisor. Okay, I think the next item will be Tiffany, who will present the report, and then we'll hear from the applicants, please. Apologies. We have to do apologies first, and we have none, and declarations of interest. And again, we have none. So apologies, Tiffany.
So thank you. So members are asked, in accordance with the delegation of licensing functions contained in the Norwich Council Statement of Licensing Policy, to consider the application for the grant of licence in effect of liquid 24 to 26 Prince of Wales Road, Norwich, following the receipt of relevant representations. Members need to determine the application to grant the premises licence in accordance with Licensing Act 2003, guidance issued under Section 182 of the Licensing Act 2003, and Norwich City Council's Statement of Licensing Policy. Turning to the main body of the report, the applicant is CC Sim UK Trade Co 2 Limited. So the registered address in Milton Keynes. The application seeks to allow the licensable activities, times, and opening hours as set out in the application form attached to Appendix A. This also includes the steps proposed to promote the licensing objectives in the operating schedule. The responses from the responsible authorities are as follows. The police representation was received. The applicant has agreed to the police conditions, and so therefore there's no outstanding objection there. Public protection representation was received, or there has been subsequent agreement which will come through with the discussion. And no further representations from responsible authorities. 6 objections to the application were received from local residents and 1 from a Norwich Council. Copies of those are attached to Appendix C. Appendix B shows the location map. Appendix E provides the elements of the City Council's local licensing policy, which are considered to have a bearing on the application. It does make reference to the current situation. So the revised policy under the Licensing Act is awaiting adoption at full council, meaning the policies remaining in force is the 2015 one containing the cumulative impact section. The proposed draft policy proposes removal of the cumulative impact policy. So the references are there, but the legal advisor will provide more advice to the committee on this matter. Then just return to the report, there are Appendix F, the elements of the national guidance issued by the Secretary of State that are considered to have a bearing on the application. In summary, in determining the application with a view to promoting the licensing objectives, the subcommittee must give appropriate weight to the steps that are appropriate to promote the licensing objectives, prevention of crime disorder, public safety, prevention of public nuisance, and the protection of children from harm. The representations and supporting information presented by all parties. Guidance issued under Section 182 of the Licensing Act 2003, Council's own Statement of Licensing Policy. Subcommittee must take such of the following steps as it considers appropriate for the promotion of the licensing objectives. Grant the application as asked, modify the conditions of the licence by altering or omitting or adding to them, reject the whole or part of the application. Subcommittee is asked to note it may not modify the conditions or reject the whole or part of the application merely because it considers it desirable to do so. It must actually be appropriate in order to promote the licensing objectives. The representations received appear to relate to issues that fall under the licensing objectives. Subcommittee is directed to paragraphs 20 and 24 of the local licensing policy, Appendix C, which contain examples of factors that impact on licensing objectives and the applicant could consider when addressing these issues. These paragraphs also contain examples of control measures that may be taken into account in operating schedules, having regard to the type of premises and all the licence activities. Subcommittee was reminded of the contents of Appendices 2, 3, 4, and 5 of the local licensing policy, not reproduced in the report, which contain calls and model conditions relevant to the 4 licensing objectives. And just to say that there was also an additional set of applicant documentation that has been circulated as well. And that concludes the report.
Yeah, thank you very much, Tiffany. Yes, noted. We received, all members of the committee received the additional pack, which is quite a lot, 97 pages, I believe. Okay, thank you. We'll hear from the applicant now, and then we'll ask you some questions. So, would you like to present your case, please?
Councillor, I wonder if I can just begin with a bit of housekeeping to ensure we've all got the same documents, because I appreciate there's been quite a lot that's come in several tranches.
Thank you.
So there's the initial applicant's pack, which you've referred to, as you've seen, and our case is effectively set out in the witness statement of Russell Quelch, pages 1 to 11. Within that pack is a set of composite conditions, and those conditions were at tab 7, so at page 114. Those have subsequently been updated, and they've been updated following helpful discussions with the environmental health officer and the addition of a condition. So you should have received a separate freestanding set of composite conditions, which are now dated the 4th of August 2021, and they run to 31 conditions. Do you have those?
I don't have those. You have those. No, we will need to take a copy of those.
It's 2 I made earlier. I apologise. That's going to leave someone short.
Was it just an amendment? Would you like
There
the
was
whole,
an amendment,
the complete
so-
suite circulated?
I think the complete suite, because the new set has numbers sequentially running from 1 to 31, which I referred to.
Okay, if you'd like to hand those to Kat, we'll ask Kat to just look through those and present it to us. While we're doing that, I'll make a reference to the cumulative impact policy. And as you know, Norwich City Council has a current policy in place, but it is outdated. A new document, a new policy document will not be including one for the time being until the new statistics are available. Therefore, for the purpose of this hearing, we will be disregarding the cumulative impact policy.
Thank you. The final document is one I circulated this morning, and I'm sorry it came to you so late. It's a letter dated the 2nd of August from Norwich Pride. You have a discretion to accept this if there are no objections. I don't know if there's any objections. Certainly there's no one here with an outstanding representation, so I'm not anticipating an objection. We say it's important for 2 reasons. One is it explains why it will be a boost to the diversity of the city centre if this licence is granted. And then there's a legal issue, which is your public sector equality duty, which I know you'll be well aware of, and the duty to make decisions that assist diversity. And we say that letter supports that point.
Okay, thank you. We've received a copy of the letter. It's been noted by the committee, and we will accept it as a document. Thank you.
I'm very grateful. The way I propose to deal with these submissions is to cover the following points. One, the importance of this nightclub application to, in particular, the young people who live in Norwich, bearing in mind some of the representations suggest there should be a nightclub in the city centre. Secondly, why this application needs to be made at all. And as I know you would have picked up from Mr. Quelch's witness statement, we are here in substance, if not form, to reinstate a nightclub licence for the same premises that lapsed in December 2020, when its then holder, the Delta Group, went into administration. As you will appreciate, there's been no industry hit harder during the pandemic by lockdowns than the nightclub industry. The Delta Group was the largest UK nightclub operator by some measure. It went bust and went into administration in December. Now, what that means for a premises license is that it lapses, meaning anyone can have that license transferred to them within 28 days, is the simplest way to look at it. If no one does that within 28 days, the license is extinguished. All that it would have took is Recon, who are Scandinavia's, in fact Europe's now largest nightclub and bar operator. They took over the Delta Group, and they took over some 44 of the UK bars and clubs. This was not one, and had the licenses transferred to them. This one slipped through the net for various commercial and legal reasons I don't need to trouble the subcommittee with. All that would have needed was 5 minutes on Norwich's website to apply to transfer the existing nightclub license, which has been there for about 20 years, into the names of my clients, and none of us would have to be here. But because of the legal problems, we had to make a new application, which is why I say this is in effect an application to reinstate a license that's been there for 20 years, rather than seeking to put a brand new license, nightclub license in the city centre. Thirdly, I'm going to deal with the conditions that have been offered. They're substantial. They go beyond the conditions on the previous license. And in particular, there are controls on the second floor terrace. So the building itself has bar and beyond, which you'll be familiar with on the ground floor. That is also operated by my clients. So ground floor, bar and beyond, that's operated for some 15 years in the city centre, and it's had no significant licensing issues, which is a testament to how well my clients run venues in Norwich city centre. Above that, first floor, is the main nightclub, which has 2/3 different rooms. And then above that was a enclosed second floor. What has been proposed is to turn that into a smoking terrace, for reasons I'll explain. You do that by building up the walls and taking off the roof. So if you can imagine standing in a brick cube with the walls higher than you, the only thing you can see is the sky. If you grant this application, that's what's created. It's been described as a rooftop nightclub. That's not what it is. It's an outside area. There have been a number of measurements, noise measurements, taken by Mr. Richard Divey, Alex Grimmer of your environmental health, as well as our own expert, Mr. David Liversidge. And the upshot is this: it is agreed from all of the experts that so long as live and recorded music and the sale of alcohol ends at midnight on the second floor, so the terrace, there won't be any public nuisance. So there's been a lot of press publicity I've seen. There's concern among the residents that you're going to have this rooftop terrace that's going to create a nuisance. Any sound goes upwards. So while Jeff Bezos and Richard Branson, if they're on another trip to space, might be troubled, no one at ground level will be. And that's why there is a new condition that's gone into the composite conditions. And that's the document I just handed to you. If you look at, please, condition 28 of that document, I'll read it out aloud because I've failed you and only can use 2, not 3. The playing of live and recorded music and the sale of alcohol is not permitted between midnight and 7 AM on the second floor of the premises. And that resolved all of the issues between the applicant and environmental health, which explains their withdrawal of their objection. I'm then going to address you on the residential objections and the supporting objection from Councillor Ash Haynes. I'm not going to have to now address you on the community policy, given your indication earlier.
Yeah, can I just interrupt you? We've had a discussion before and decided that 2 of the objections were not valid in their representation. So the objection on page 25 and the objection on page 32 can be disregarded.
Thank you. Yes, and that I assume is on the basis it's not relevant to the licensing objectives. Thank you. Right. Although you do have some late night bars, which on occasion, some nights of the week, convert into clubs, but small clubs, Norwich does not now have a large landmark nightclub in its city centre. And this application seeks to fill that void. There are very few cities of the size and repute of Norwich that do not have a major nightclub in their nighttime entertainment zone, which is in effect this Wells Road. We did have for many years, as I explained, the building which we are now applying for a licence on, the one above Bar and Beyond, some 20 years it operated as a nightclub. It operated under various names, Liquid, Pure, Love to Love, but it closed its doors for good in 2012, I believe. Since then, you have a magnificent space right in your city centre that is derelict. One of the residents who's made a representation speaks of having to call the authorities 15 times because of squatters who have taken up residence in what should be a splendid building. And we hope to put that right. I came up yesterday evening and walked through the city centre and along Prince of Wales Road, and I will confess it was dispiriting to see so many shuttered commercial units. And that's not unique to Norwich, it is a consequence of the economic ravages that COVID has only accelerated. This application, we all talk about recovery after COVID. We all talk about city centres bouncing back. This application is subject to your decision, exactly the sort of thing that pushes the economy, the nighttime and daytime economy of your city centre in the right direction following COVID. Nightclubs themselves sometimes have a bad rap. And I know they're not for everyone, and it may be that one or two of us in this room, our nightclub days are behind us. But it's the younger generation who value nightclubs. There are two quotes I'd like to give you about the value of nightclubs, and I'll firstly deal with the human spirit before I come to the economy, because the first is perhaps more attractive. The Independent newspaper in October 2020 had an article on the fate of nightclubs in the UK, and poignantly but accurately, the journalist wrote that nightclubs and the wider nighttime economy are not a nice-to-have optional extra. They are, for many, the only way to feel as though they are alive and not simply existing. Just a few weeks ago, 20th of July, in the Times, there was a feature on nightclubs, and it said this, it struck me. Clubbing has long been compared to religion, clubs to churches. I've always understood that. It's about togetherness, being around people who in that moment all share the same desire and purpose. So while it might not be everyone's cup of tea, for the younger generation of Norwich and elsewhere, clubs are where it all happens. That is their community. And we want a large, dedicated nightclub to re-enter the city centre so your youngsters can enjoy themselves, because if anyone has had their enjoyment taken away from them disproportionately to the harm of COVID, it's the younger generation. They've made the sacrifices for the sake of the rest of us. The young generation in Norwich are not only your year-round residents, they are, of course, your university students, and having this sort of venue open in the city centre is a positive attraction to students, and I'm aware that one councillor in particular has got particular experience with the city's university, and doesn't need me to indicate how much students do value nightclubs as a form of entertainment. and how, when students come to pick which university I'm going to go to, they do look to see what the nightlife is going to be. The other factor that's sometimes overlooked when people talk about nightclubs is the impact it has on both the daytime and the early evening economy, the positive impact to have a major nightclub in the centre. For every clubber who goes out, they are likely to go into your retailers in your city centre to buy their party clothes. They are likely to use your local hairdressers and beauticians, so they look their best for their night out. They are likely to go to your accessory shops and then to go to your restaurants in the evening before their nightclub experience. And they are likely to use your bars before they go to the club. They are likely to use your taxi drivers. And if they come from out of town, they will be using your B&Bs, hostels and hotels. So having the sort of club that we hope to open with your permission can have, and is proven to have, an extremely beneficial trickle-down effect on a city centre's daytime and evening economy, and Norwich, like every other town city in the country, needs that boost. That's particularly so because of the decline in retail. It was already happening prior to COVID. COVID has massively accelerated it. People have now got used in greater numbers to ordering all their retail online from Amazon or other online retailers. And so you will know what impact that's had on your high street retail. This application, if granted, will give a boost to everyone. Second factor is this. Bearing in mind this is an empty shell of a first and second floor, do you want it to remain an empty shell for decades to come? There was a planning permission for it to be offices. No one took it up. Planning permission expired. Retail is not going to take on anything of this size. This building is designed to be a nightclub, and we want to put it back into its proper use. And if it's said, well, you know, if you just look at the licensing objectives, why is Mr. Grant talking to us about the economy? The answer is because the Court of Appeal says what you already know, and that is, and I quote here from the case of Hope and Glory for your lawyer's note, we've got it in our pack, it's paragraph 42, and this is where the Court of Appeal said this in a licensing case. Licensing decisions often involve weighing a variety of competing considerations. The demand for licensed establishments, the economic benefit to the proprietor and to the locality by drawing in visitors and stimulating the effect of law and order and the impact of the lives of those who live and work in the vicinity. So I say this, yes, nightclubs can have an impact on local residents, but well-managed clubs with good dispersal policies by highly responsible and experienced operators can mitigate that impact for residents, and it has to be balanced against all the positives of having a major nightclub back in your city centre. So I want to just now come to the responsible authorities. We now have the agreement of all the authorities, and you will appreciate that an application of this size is scrutinised with considerable care by the police, by your licensing department, and by environmental health. The fact that all of those authorities, they offered helpful conditions, which we've accepted, and they form part of the composite conditions. All of them now express the professional opinion that this application, with the 31 conditions, can be granted in a manner that does not undermine the licensing objectives, in particular crime, disorder and public nuisance. Your experts, of course, are not the decision makers, you are, but you would wish to give very considerable weight to the views of all of your responsible authorities, in the sense that they are your primary source for expert advice on crime and disorder in the case of police, and on public nuisance in the case of your noise team and environmental health. And the reason that their views deserve such weight is because they are independent of the parties. They're independent of us, they're independent of the residents. And they can provide an objective expert opinion that perhaps cannot be matched elsewhere. I'm happy to say that our own expert, our own noise expert, Mr. David Liversidge, who's prepared a detailed report that's in your fund, in your applicant's fund, page 139 to 157. He's carried out very considerable measurements, noise measurements. He's discussed them with EH, and they are now at an agreed position that the condition we propose for the second floor, that everyone live and recorded music and the sale of alcohol at midnight, that strikes the right balance. One of the important points that we think perhaps been missed by some of the residents as a result of the press reporting into this case, one of the reasons that we are spending a lot of money on this second floor terrace, removing the roof, building it up, soundproofing it, is that it gets all the smokers off of the street in Prince of Wales Road, and importantly, off of the former smoking area, which is at the rear of the premises. So you'll note from some of the residents from St Faith's Lane who have made a representation that they talk about the noise from people at the back of the premises when it operated some years ago. The back of the premises leads on to St Faith's Lane. And what you did have is you did have scores of people congregating, customers, at the back of the premises, because that was the former smoking area. And if that was the end of their night, they would have dispersed down St Faith's Lane. So when you read the resident objections from St Faith's Lane, please know that they did have a problem. We've resolved it precisely by creating the second floor smoking terrace. It will also hugely benefit people, the 3 residents on Prince of Wales Road, because highly unusually for a venue, they will not have smokers outside. They will have our smokers in their road. The concerns are also for dispersal, what happens when people leave. And there is a dispersal policy within your appellant to applicant documents, page 137 to 138. But what I'm going to ask, in fact, I'm going to ask Brett Collier, if you wouldn't mind, just to explain what we're going to do at the end of the night to limit the disturbance to residents on Prince of Wales Road by our deployment of dispersal and SIA door supervisors outside. Brett, do you mind?
Have you used one of these before?
Right, if you hit the green button.
Yeah. Can you hear me okay? Okay. So yeah, we're used to writing dispersal policies for different cities, different venues. This one, this one at the end of the evening will be regarding door supervisors outside. Excuse me a sec. So the door supervisors outside will be SIA registered door supervisors with body cams on, and they will be dispersing the crowd, making sure that the guests leave in a quiet manner and that they move on away from just hanging around the building. Excuse me. This is gone.
Would you like to get some water?
Yeah.
Sorry, Brett Collier I was just getting this water, could I also just point out this, that your own statement of licensing policy, whether it's the old or the new, itself promotes a vibrant city centre and speaks of the benefits of culture and entertainment policy. So I just make that point that what I say is thankfully supported by both of the policies, old and new. Brad, are you okay?
Yeah, sorry, I was having a moment there, my voice completely went. So yeah, the policy is written specifically for Norwich, and the plan is that we would have 2 door supervisors outside the front doors. They will be asking customers and guests to make sure they're quiet when they leave the building. There will be a door supervisor on the opposite side of the road, which will be making sure that guests do not congregate and hang around the area, therefore causing noise and potential disturbance. We would also have members of the team on litter control outside to make sure that they clean up on Christwell Road, make sure that our guests also had an extra pair of eyes and ears. We would also increase door supervisors if we thought the need that people were congregating and hanging around. There's naturally across the street 2 lay-bys near where the Tesco Express is and a little bit further up. And the plan would be that that is where we would encourage customers to be picked up in taxis. And we would have a door supervisor over there. Again, who would have a radio to the city centre link, and also would have a body camera on them, so that if there was any issues, it would all be recorded.
Thank you. Does that give you an idea of the steps we're going to take at the end of the night?
Thank you. Yes, it does. I think at this point, maybe we'll pause for a couple of questions on what we've heard so far, if there are any. So I've got one just to kick off, Mr. Collier. And you're talking about guiding people out. How will you deal with people who are clearly not going to leave quietly and who, in your opinion, and it's obvious when this happens, when they are going to be noisy further down the street, how will you deal with those people? What sort of approach do you take?
I think it's got to be, well, with any licensed premises, you are constantly monitoring customers' behaviour and making sure that no one is too intoxicated, no one is being too loud, etc. So by having members of security out there telling people as they leave, encouraging them to keep quiet, to leave along, and actually by having the door supervisor in high-vis jackets so that other people can see it, and it's just a softly, friendly approach, really. I mean, that's what's worked for us in the past. Just encouraging people to keep quiet and move along.
Okay, thank you. And going a little bit further from that, if you notice people who've been in your club causing a disturbance further down or up the street, how would you approach that? Would you take responsibility for that and intervene, or someone?
Yeah, we would. Like I said, we would put out onto the street, and I mean, there's not a set time in the dispersal policy. It'd be until the area had dispersed. So whether that's 30 minutes, whether it's 20 minutes, whether it's 45 minutes, however long it is, we would keep our door supervisors outside to make sure that the streets are safe and that people move along. Inevitably on Prince of Wales Road, on key nights, there's also police officers also out there to help us as deterrents to stop any disturbance. So in terms of us, we would be very proactive, and if people were making a noise, if they were misbehaving, we would go over and speak to them. If it then escalated, the police are always on that street, but there's also the city centre radio, which we could use to contact to inform the authorities, and we would treat it, although it's not our area, we wouldn't not manage the problem. We'd be out there and be proactive.
Okay, thank you very much for your questions and Councillor. Councillor Hunt, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just to pick up on that point, if I could refer to the third composite conditions here, please. Second sentence of that: any person within this venue who appears to be intoxicated or who is behaving disorderly will be given care and consideration in leaving the venue. What does that mean in practical terms?
In practical terms, we wouldn't allow a customer who was either being too disorderly or if they were slightly intoxicated, we would sit them down, we would get hold of their friends, try and contact them. In the past, we have arranged for ringing their, whether it's parents or friends, to come collect them. also in the past paid for taxis for our guests to get home if they're feeling slightly unwell or disorientated. So the idea is we don't want to put somebody on the street that could then either, one, become ill or become a nuisance to other residents. It's our responsibility that within our premises we need to look after them. So we do have a policy across the board that if anyone looks either vulnerable or disorientated, then they don't leave our front door until a member of management and the door security has sat down with them and spoke with them. And the idea is, the last thing we want is for them to leave and something happens to them.
Great, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Any further? Okay, I've got a couple more questions, but just so far. You talked about the smoking terrace, and that's going to close at 12. But presumably
It's not going to close at 12.
Okay, so the regulated entertainment.
Yes, that will stop at 12, and the sale of alcohol, because there's a bar on the second floor, that will close. The reason for that is this, that there is something called the Lombard effect. When you're hearing blaring music, and then you're trying to talk to someone, you obviously raise your voice. It's called the Lombard effect. And the concern was that if there's still loud music playing, that people, even if residents can't hear the music, the very fact that the customers can hear it will lead them to raise their voices, both in the roof terrace. That probably won't cause an issue. Then when they leave, they're still talking loudly when they're in the street. So that's why the issue is not having people per se on the rooftop after midnight. It's the fact of having live and recorded music. And of course, if you're still selling alcohol to people, because there's a bar there, there's people will reside there longer, for a longer period. So that's why people will go up to the rooftop, but they're less likely to be making a noise that causes disturbance or staying there very long if they can't buy any alcohol and they can't listen to music. So that's why the compromise was reached for midnight.
Okay, thank you. So will people be able to take their drinks to the terrace?
They will, yes.
Okay. Will there be non-smoking areas, designated non-smoking areas on that roof terrace?
I don't think so. I think the whole of the rest of the building is obviously the no smoking, designated no smoking area.
Okay, so it is. So is this designated as a smoking area or an entertainment area?
Both.
Okay, so when it's an entertainment area, there'll be no non-smoking areas.
I don't think there's a proposal for that. No, there won't. We can't stop people mingling.
Okay, thank you.
What I should add is one of the conditions ensures that there has to be an SIA supervising. So there'll be an element of control there.
Okay, thank you. I think just one more question and I'll let you continue. You talked about the trickle-down effect to the economy in reference a particular case. Is that the only evidence you have for that trickle-down effect, or are there other documents you can refer to that prove that effect on the economy?
There's a 45-page report I've included in the applicant's pack. It's the all-parliamentary group's report on the nighttime economy. You'll find that at pages 12 to 57 of the applicant's pack.
Yeah, can you reference in that particular element, because I received this yesterday and I haven't had a chance to read that particular section. However, I believe it will be interesting. I've set it aside to read.
Yes. In fact, if you look at page 14 of the applicant's pack. So 14 of the applicant's pack, that should be the executive summary. If you read the first paragraph of that we've highlighted, that makes the general point and it goes into further detail below. talked about the nighttime economy creating vast and codependent supply chains of freelancers, sole traders, and suppliers, and supports thousands of auxiliary businesses. The detail is later in the report.
That's nice. Would you like to continue? Again? We may pause for more questions at some point.
There's not much more. There's not much more I was going to say, so I think I can summarise it in a few bullet points. One, this is about £1 million investment. If you were to grant us the green light, it will create about 40 jobs. That's important for Norwich City Centre, like any city centre in the current predicament we're all in. If the youngsters in Norwich do not have a large dedicated nightclub to go to, they don't simply go home and go to bed early with a couple of Horlicks. What they will do, if they want a large nightclub experience, is they will take what's known as the leisure pound and spend it elsewhere in other cities and other towns that do have these clubs. We say that's better spent in Norwich. As for residents and concerns, we've offered a condition that a mobile phone number must be prominently available. That's condition 29 of the duty manager who's on site. And that will mean if there are particular disturbances, a resident can pick up the phone and contact the manager who's on site to deal with it. That we hope will be something that can help solve any problems and nip them in the bud, rather than residents having to find long delays to call council who may not be there until the next day. We have a vulnerability and safeguarding policy for our customers, and that's included at pages 132 to 136 of the applicant's pack. And Recon safeguarding policy is widely acknowledged as setting the benchmark for nightclub operators around Europe. It's a really impressive one. They have trained first aiders there on all nights. They really look after their clientele. They offer chaperones to people who might need to be in the first aid. They offer taxi escorts to people who are unwell. There's a refuge area. They run the scheme called Ask Angela, which is if a vulnerable person is worried about someone harassing them, they use the code words Ask Angela, and then our staff will spring into action to safeguard and protect them. We have an extraordinary search policy. We've set that out in our bundle at pages 129 to 131. 100% of bags are searched. 50% on average of customers are hand search, pat-down searches. Everyone goes through a metal surcharge. It's frankly not dissimilar to trying to get on an aeroplane in an airport. It's a really impressive search policy that they have. The hours that we ask for are, with one exception, the same as the hours on the lapsed license that existed for 20 years. The exception is the Sunday hours, where this application requests 1 hour more than previously. That is there at the request of the police. Bar and beyond, it closes at 2:30 on a Sunday, so our premises below. If, as before, the nightclub also closed at 2:30, it would damage the gradual dispersal of customers. So the police asked us to increase the Sunday hours by an hour, so you avoid the clash of customers coming from two venues at the same time. So that explains why the Sunday hour is an hour later than the existing license. As for the resident objections, I hope you will conclude that the mitigation measures and the conditions we've offered deal in an appropriate and proportionate way with the concerns of all of those residents. Even if we did not exclude those two residents as not making relevant representations, 6 of them represent 0.005% of Norwich's residential population. That does not represent a groundswell of negativity towards the grant of this application, and sometimes the silent majority of residents who are either neutral or quite like the idea, that silent majority can speak volumes. A license is a conditional privilege. It's not like a planning permission. Once you get planning, that's permanent. And it's conditional on my clients getting it right, not causing public nuisance, not being the source of crime and disorder. Because if they are, of course, any party can review the license, and then the license can be curtailed or ultimately revoked. And my clients are acutely aware of that. A premises license under the Licensing Act is the single most precious asset on a building in the nighttime economy. And they are extremely experienced at protecting those assets by getting it right. If things go wrong, by engaging with the community and by putting it right quickly. And they have a real track record of that, and they will do that if you are minded to grant them the privilege of this license. And if you do, the young people of Norwich will have a major nightclub to dance in again. And those are our submissions.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll have more questions now from members. Councillor Huntley, please.
Thank you, Chair. In reference to what we heard about the mobile number that would be made available, so this is 29.29 for composite conditions. Could I ask how that number would be made available? It does suggest here will be made available to residents who have objected to the grant of the new premises licence. Will that be more widely disseminated to residents?
Without taking instructions, my view is it ought to be more widely disseminated. So having now dumped my clients in it, Russell, would you explain how that can happen?
Fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually a model that we used in another venue, because we have a few complaints. So we link the local residents up the mobile number, and it's actually not worth giving the mobile number of the manager, because there may be occasions when he's on holiday. So what we actually came up with a number that could be issued to any residents, and they can call the manager on duty of any issues. And sometimes it was as simple as some people sat, you know, one of the other venues had some benches outside some flats, and there might be called as 8 or 10 security on at the venue. You know, they people around and then they just move people on there, which is actually a problem due to the nightclub and the customers from the nightclub, just general support in the local residence areas. So yeah, it can be shared widely. I mean, I don't want to put it on the front page of paper, but obviously in the vicinity of the venue, so problems.
So just to clarify, would that be residents in that local vicinity being made available?
Yeah, we made available
in advance. What
Yeah.
the number is, and somebody, not necessarily the manager, somebody could always be able to respond in good time.
Yeah, and we have to be very clear on when the venue's open, because obviously if there's another premises open next door that's not our responsibility and there's a problem on a Tuesday night and we're not trading, then we have to be very clear with the residents that it was related to the venue and such, and the nights of the train. But yeah. Yeah, thank you for that. So how will you communicate this number to residents? I think that we look at the St. Faith's Lane, which is the key one, and then there's sort of apartments down the road. So
And I think the options, would you be able to do sort of a letter drop?
yeah,
I thought within a, say, 100 metres circumference.
Yeah, I think we agree.
Okay to do that.
Yeah, we agree with the residents that we would need to look at and communicate via that block and stuff like that. Okay, thank you. Are you offering that as a condition? Yeah.
Yes,
100 metres. Yeah.
100 metres.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I have a couple of questions, and I think we'll talk about sound. We'll introduce your sound technician. I was reading about the care package that you present to your customers, and the Ask Angela in particular is a well-known scheme. In Bar and Beyond and other venues that you run, how often is this activated, if you like?
Let's take that.
I suppose it's been quite difficult. We haven't got any stats here because we've obviously stood up with COVID for the best part of 18 months. I would say it is activated sporadically. It's not.
Yeah, I mean, although there's no stats, what I can say is I've probably had, if there's an incident at a venue, the venue would raise an incident report, which would then automate an email to the regional director and then myself. And I think I've had 2 or 3 this week across the group where Mrs. Ford's report has stated that a customer had called it to the attention of a member of staff. Now, what it doesn't say, but it's Ask Angela, what it does show is that we have protocols in place where customers feel quite comfortable going to members of staff to actually raise concerns. So whilst I can't give you an exact answer on Ask Angela, there is some clear reports that I've received this week that show customers have come forward to our staff.
Okay, thank you. And what sort of information do you give to your customers about that particular scheme? How is that communicated to customers? And what sort of policy do you have towards behaviour that would trigger the Ask Angela interventions?
Okay, so there's always signage and posters up in the toilet areas and around the venue. Now, what the follow-up action would depend on actually what the situation is, but a member of security or management would always then talk to the customers involved. So first of all, the agreed and then potentially the aggressor or the individual that's misbehaving. And then depending on what the outcome is, would then trigger if it was whether it was asking somebody to leave, whether it was calling the authorities. It all depends on the seriousness. If it's somebody following somebody around, we would always take details. So if it's say a female customer said, "Oh, this guy's following me around," it might be the detective side detective, hold an area, pass some details, make a log, and then potentially, depending on the situation, we might say you need to stop, change your behaviour, or we might ask them to leave. If it was something that was a bit more serious, and it was actually something that was, somebody was touching inappropriately, then we might call the police. So it all depends on what the allegation is and what's actually happening. But there would certainly be a log, and there would certainly be information held to pass the authorities, because sometimes it's part of a big picture or quite a problem.
Okay, thank you. And what kind of policies do you have in place to prevent that kind of behaviour beginning in the first place? Is there anything that you communicate to customers either through your social media, website, or as they enter the premises?
As they enter the premises, we have signage. We don't do anything across social media, to be honest. Just products on social media, but we have door staff positions and door staff deployments. We would always look at, if we had insecurity on, we wouldn't just say go wherever you want. We would have a deployment plan for security staff and a deployment plan for staffing. So the idea is that we would cover every area so that there's eyesight and CCTV footage, and it's very clear where the security in each area of the building. We've got toilet attendants, so we've got staff present in the toilet areas. So that's what we do.
Okay, thank you. And where inappropriate behaviour may take place, do you have, is your staff training programme set up to improve training on spotting that behaviour at its early stage?
Can you describe it a bit more about that? Okay, so any members of staff go for production, that will be around their job roles, as we say, the weekend plan, awareness training and behaviour. But then we will also have a security company that's private security have to go for a full induction program. So any security staff will have to have an SIA badge, so they would come for a full SIA course, and then an induction program into the venue and what our company policies are. So although we would recruit security staff for an agency, they will still go through an induction pack that is designed by us and about the venue and about the venue staff from their role when they're working in the post. Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Huntley?
Thank you, Chair. Just in relation to the vulnerability and safeguarding that's been outlined here, it's covered in point 24 of the composite conditions here. A person trained in first aid will be present. How many people do you think will be attending, sort of roughly, of the evening, and is one person sufficient in that role?
I think we say one, but the capacity of the club is anywhere from design around 800 to 900. But all of the management will go for first aid training. So I actually there have been one in Norwich.
Yeah.
How many? So there's in Barnwell there's 5 first aid trained members of the team. So whilst we'll say there would always be a first aid present, we realised that 1 for 800 is not satisfactory. So all the management, for example, would be trained a number of staff, and we look to replicate a similar number. So you know, it could be anywhere 5, 7, 8, and all the SAs or stuff are cover first aid training as part of the SA badge. So you know, on a night time, it wouldn't be unusual for there to be more than 12 or 13 personnel working with the first aid training.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Given the arrangement here of different floors, would it be possible to have a condition where a first aider would be looking after a particular floor? So in the sense of it, there's going to be more than one first aid trained member of staff in attendance at any one night.
I think by dint of the fact there must be an SIA looking after the smoking terrace, and the SIA will automatically be first aid trained, that would mean that there would be one on each floor. You could obviously add to the first aid condition to make it clear that the person trained in first aid will be present on both floors of the venue during trading hours. That clarify it.
That would be a sufficient clarification for me.
Yes, thank you. Would you like to put that into an amended wording? 20.
The wording would be on 24. It would read: "The person trained in first aid will be present on both floors of the venue during trading hours." I mean, that's before.
Okay, thank you. That's noted. Okay. Any more questions at the moment? Right. Okay. I've got a couple of questions. You refer to the responsible authorities and the fact that they either not object or withdraw their objections, and invited us to assign weight to that. How much weight do you think we should give to the residents' concerns? And in this case, I think we just heard that maybe 900 people will likely be in the area on any given night, on a busy night. How much weight should we give to those residents? Who will be concerned about those extra 800 people in the area?
I'm not going to give you a score as to the weight because it's a matter of your judgment, and that's something that can't be. That's qualitative, that's not quantitative. Your assessment. What I can say is this: you have 6 residents out of a population of 129,500 of Norwich.
Yeah, just stop you there. I think that referring to the entire population, both
Norwich as potential objectors. Takes things a little bit away from the vicinity. And if we had 1,000 objections that we all lived in Eton, would that carry more weight than half a dozen that live close to the area?
There are more than 6 residents in, let's say, 100-metre vicinity. I anticipate there are several thousand within a 100-metre vicinity. We have a tiny number objecting. So you will give that weight, but you will also wish to give weight to the number of people who do not object. Now that might be because a number of those people don't care, some might not know, but a great deal of those, and I can't quantify it, would be saying, about time we had a decent nightclub open in the Norwich city centre, or I really don't mind, or I don't like nightclubs, but you know what, it's not just about me, it's about the youngsters here as well, because I don't want our kids to leave Norwich when they grow up, because there's not enough to do in the nighttime economy. There's a lot of that, so you have to balance all those different factors, and that's precisely why you're there.
Okay, thank you. Well, we've noted that we have received one letter of support. We haven't received any others. Okay, so we should probably hear about the noise and refer to the statistics that we've received. I'm going to propose that we have a short break before we do that. Comfort break.
Yes, Councillor, I wasn't proposing to call our noise expert unless you have specific questions. Essentially, the noise issues are agreed between the 2 experts.
Okay, I was curious to know in that case why you brought the expert with you.
It was in case we had additional objectors here. We don't have actually any outstanding objectors here who raised noise issues.
We have valid objectors in our pack, and we can refer to those.
Mr. Liversidge is here. Yes, I think he would probably appreciate having his views valued, bearing in mind how long it's spent to get here. So we can call him and he can do the noise issue and stuff.
Thank you. Yes, I propose therefore we have a 10-ish minute break. Come back at 11:45.
Thank you, please.
Thank you. Just for information, toilets, ladies are to the left, gents to the right, and remember to put your masks on if you can, please.
Leonie?
We're back.
Back.
Thank you. Welcome back to Norwich City Council Licensing Subcommittee. It's Friday, 6th of August 2021, and we're talking to applicants for grant of premises license for liquid 24 to 26 Chenswell Road in Norwich. Okay, so we talked about the operating schedule, and we're going to talk about the noise issue, because I think that's the main crux of the objectives that we projected. So can you describe the process that you've undertook to establish how the noise will be generated, dissipated, and how it will not be a breach of the licensing objective?
Certainly. Before I do, and it's connected to that question, my clients reminded me outside that, as you heard the figure of 900, that's expected to be the fire safety capacity. It might be a bit lower once the fit out is complete. They also point out a nightclub almost never runs to capacity, but also that there is a gradual dispersal through the night. So not everyone, in fact very few, stay until the bitter end. People might come a bit earlier and leave a bit earlier. So you don't get what could sound like a horror story of 900 people being disgorged onto Prince of Wales Road. That doesn't happen in reality. You have a gradual dispersal through the night, and then what you have is you have a fixed wind down period. Music starts to come down, DJ starts to give messages to people, respect the neighbourhood before you leave. The SIA staff are put outside. So when the bulk of people leave, which might be towards the last hour to 2 hours of the night, there is SIA there, dispersing them, keeping them quiet. And that, of course, have a positive effect, not just on our customers, but on customers of the other bars in Prince of Wales Road. When you see SIA in the street in high vis, it can have a calming effect, a deterrent effect on people who are going to behave like an idiot and shout at their friends good night. So with that comment, I'm going to ask David Liversedge to explain the noise process.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Great. Thank you. When we were initially engaged to do the work here, the first thing that I did was to get in contact with Norwich City Planning, because this was originally to support the planning application that this work was undertaken. They very kindly forwarded my outline for the way that the assessment would be undertaken through the Secure Public Protection section, and I had 7 responses back from them, which were generally in agreement with what I was suggesting, the actual guidance and British standards we used, but making a certain point that basically that two points were made. Firstly, that if there was to be any recorded music played on the 2nd floor terrace, that there should be a noise limiting device fitted. And this is basically something which fits in with the sound system design, which is that if things go above a certain level, tend to go above a certain level, there is like a set electrical break on it, which actually make sure that agreed levels are not exceeded. And it's particularly requirement that this should operate at 2 separate levels, one before 11 o'clock and one after 11 o'clock. And that was something which was discussed and acceded to. That was something which we were happy to actually agree. Second thing was
the noise limiter condition is condition 27 on the composite condition, so that's now a condition of the license.
The second point was really to do with
the effect of people's voices on the terrace itself, and in particular to look at what is known as the LA max, which is basically the maximum noise level. You can measure noise in a number of ways. Often you take an average, and that may tend to sort of squash out, if you like, the highs and the lows in a set level over a certain period. If you're looking at a max level, you're looking at what that actual top level would be in a defined period as well. And it's also in the World Health Organization, one of those indices which is linked with sleep disturbance. And the World Health Organization, there is a section about sleep disturbance which says that basically any sounds over 60 dB for between 10 and 15 instants per night, and it refers to an 8-hour time period between about 11 o'clock and 7 o'clock, although that is often known to be a interpretation. And so, having agreed what parameters we should be looking at, we then proceeded to actually build an acoustic model of the area and the club itself. And that is done with reference to ordnance survey data to get an idea of any changes in particular topography, and also the actual mapping itself. And then, in conjunction with Google Earth, we then built up a three-dimensional model of Prince of Wales Road and the surrounding roads as well, going back into Norwich School to sort of pick up some of the areas there and going forward, so that we had what we felt were going to be the places where the highest sun levels were going to be predicted to occur, and also where there would be some fall off due to the actual barrier effects of buildings. Apart from the World Health Organization, we also made reference to the current British standard, which refers to design levels for bedrooms, so that we have an external sound level from the World Health Organization and internal level from the British standard. Then, in consultation with the client and the client's architect, we then put a series of noise sources within the second floor, making reference to the materials that are going to be used to reconstruct and to improve the actual soundproofing levels, and also to remove the roof area from the top. What we then did was we then ran the model to look at various locations around the site, mainly concentrating on Prince of Wales Road, directly adjacent and directly opposite, because we felt that if there were to be any effects that were remote, then they were the areas that we would need to look at. And the highest levels that we predicted were actually 59 dB, so slightly under what the World Health Organization was suggesting. From that, we were able to conclude that we felt that there was not likely to be a public nuisance caused by the operation of the terrace. And as such, we then submitted our report. We had some feedback from public protection to suggest that while in principle they were happy for maybe an earlier time for the terrace to be used, they would seek to put a cut-off in for when the music was turned off and the sale of alcohol in that terrace was actually curtailed. They were suggesting that time be midnight, and that was fed back to employed my client, who was able to exceed that, and hence what we have produced in the report show is a way of but we're not likely to be causing a public nuisance by the use of the terrace, which is obviously the change to the layout of the club.
Okay, thank you. Any questions to? Yeah, Councillor Button.
You mentioned in the report that you're going to gain real life readings. When do you, well, obviously you can't do this till you're open. How long will you undertake those if you are given permission? How long will the readings be taken to get the measures? And you said 59 decibels was what was you'd recorded. Is that at the higher reading, or is that the actual maximum readings you got?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, second point first, 59 as an LA max is the highest of those that I modelled. I would think that if we are given permission, then we would certainly wish to take some measurements as soon as possible, I think, to get an idea of what the current noise climate is there. I did actually go out last night to take a few reviews to see where we were in regards to the current noise climate there. So I did take some measurements between about 12 and 1 last night, and we could be on maxes at the closest property. Existing maximums are between 64 and 74, mainly from the road traffic. There are also people walking through. Now, this hasn't been entered in, so obviously I only did it last night, but I'm obviously happy to sort of share this with public protection. It's not something that we are particularly relying on in this instance, but it is there as an informative view.
Okay, thank you. Councillor
Thank you, Chair. On page 143, the second pack that we've received, point 1.2, there's mention made of the retention of walls and double glazing. Could it be confirmed or clarified whether that will be retained?
I've just had the nod from the architect, and I confirm that that is actually.
Thank you very much. Subsequent to that, I think Mr. Grant referred to soundproofing. Will that additionally be in place as well as the retention of those walls and the double glazing?
It will. Basically, the new structure will feature a staircase which actually goes from first to second floor, and that will sit inside the front elevation of the building. So effectively, what's being created on the facade which looks out onto Prince of Wales Road is a corridor of existing glazing backed up with stud work, and then the creation of a second wall set back about 1.3 meters back for the stairs, and a second stud wall. So effectively, what we have is quite a large construction at that level. I believe that there was a request from Mr. Trevor to retain the double glazing on the sidewall, which was actually a request, and as such, that would be retained as is. And also the existing brickwork stairs as it is, but basically we retained.
Thank you for that clarification.
Councillors, the possible exception of barristers and professional enjoys talking about their work and work with architects. Could I ask you to address the control of the build of the second floor terrace, perhaps to give further details about the soundproof?
Karen?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, David actually summarised it spot on. The existing glazing, which faces out of the Prince of Wales Road to one side, will be retained. The existing double glazing on those windows will be retained and enhanced. And then on the Prince of Wales side, like I said, there is essentially an acoustic buffer zone, which is a dead space. It's a fire exit there, so there'll be in there under normal circumstances. So the customers aren't actually buying the glazing onto Prince of Wales Road. They're set about 1.3 metres back from Prince of Wales Road. The other two sides are already brickwork. That's all retained and is further insulated on the inside face, which will help kill any noise, absorbing noise travelling horizontally. So basically, from where the building sits at the moment, its only improvement, other than the fact that obviously it doesn't hold in roof, but that hole is 2.5 metres above the floor level. So Eric explained earlier, customers have sunken down, perimeter walls well above their heads, and unless you were half there, there's no question any visibility to or from the terrace from the street. The only action over the terrace was there if you were passing over the top of a helicopter. And there's no sight lines down into the terrace from any high properties either. Well, possible exception of the steeple jack on the that's about it.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry, Councillor.
Thank you. Just to come back on that last comment, it does appear to suggest here, this is 1.2, that there is direct line of sight to residential bedrooms.
I'm not on in front of you, but I would suggest that's, I think when David says line of sight, that's been David's what direct line of sight, the acoustic line of sight, whereas in fact those windows are completely physically blocked out.
Yes, you correct me, thanks so much. Having visited the site yesterday, there would be a line of sight through the window on the side. It's quite important.
Thank you. Okay, so we have the windows on Prince of Wales Road, which there are residences opposite. Those windows are completely blocked out. There's no line of sight. There's no acoustic line of sight. There's glazing on the side. So facing Prince of Wales Road, that's the left-hand side. Those windows are blocked up. They are double glazed. That double glazing remains in accordance with the request that remains through protection. And there was a, if you look quite along that Prince of Wales Road, there is a line of sight. It's very big, quite a long way down Prince of Wales Road.
And to confirm, if you go there, there's actually like a curved terrace that leads down towards number 1 Prince of Wales Road. Very interesting.
No, thank you very much for that
You mentioned the height of the roof, 2.5 metres. So presumably therefore the walls will be 2.5 metres high. And will they be cut off vertically? Will it be an architecture?
So from the street externally, there will be no change whatsoever. The wall goes up to the existing height. You'll still see the existing glass, albeit on Prince of Wales Road, it will be blocked up and insulated internally. The wall goes up to the existing sort of parapet, which remains not touching it. And then behind that parapet is a flat existing flat roof. There's actually not even a solid flat roof, but it has a big glass roof light in it, which is better than single pane glass anyway. Probably going to cut out 90% of that flat roof back to close to the parapet. Just a little bit of structure around the edges when you stop the walls from collapsing. Essentially, the flat roof is removed behind the parapet, which you will not, as I say, you will not see the difference unless you are passing overhead.
Thank you. Councillor, I just showing a photograph of the
You should see, well, you will see no difference.
Yeah, okay. So with the acoustics, clearly the people who have objected to this are concerned about both people dispersing on the streets. And clearly we've heard about potential for hundreds of extra people through the night. I mean, For some people, it might be preferable for them to all leave at the same time and get it over and done with, but we're hearing about dispersal throughout the night. So there is clearly going to be an issue of noise there, and it would appear that the objectors are also concerned about noise from the roof, which is going to be open after midnight. The documentation suggests that there's going to be background music at the time, so after 12 o'clock. Is that correct?
No, the ball music will finish at midnight.
Okay, so there'll be no music, no background.
No, and that's why we worded it in the way of no live or recorded music, as opposed to no regulated entertainment, which does not include background music. So no live and recorded music, that's what it says on the tin. No background, no foreground.
Thank you for that clarification. The bar and beyond current smoking area, will that be replaced by this? Where is the current bar and beyond smoking?
It's currently in the courtyard inside, bar and beyond, so that would still remain.
And is this the place that was referenced by objectors that we're talking about noise?
No, it's not. The objectors were referring to when the premises were previously liquid and the smoke there was outside next to the school.
So
that will be complete. That will no longer be in operation.
Okay, so to confirm, it has an entirely different
Yeah.
smoking area, it will remain a separate building entity.
Completely councils.
Okay, thank you. I think we probably have another question or two. Yes, and that is still about the sound. And I'm bearing in mind that we've had the objections, and we hear regularly in this committee about gardens being loud and noise. So thinking about the period after 12 o'clock, what's our kind of expected noise will we have from the garden at that point? What is the maximums? And how can we be sure that the locals won't be able to hear that talking at that time?
When we said garden, do we mean terrace?
Yes, and in the terrace. It's effectively a terrace on the garden on the second floor.
Yes. Yeah, if we want certainty, none of us would ever make any applications and we'd never ever grant any, but there are no certainties. What there is the best technical experts, both our expert and your own sound experts, who have assessed it and said in their view it is unlikely there is going to be any noise disturbance from that second floor terrace. If the reality turns out to be very different, and that's the best evidence we have, if the reality is different, well then my clients are under a legal duty to prevent a public nuisance as a result of their activity. They will have to pull back customers at different times if it does in fact cause a nuisance. And they know that. So that's why I said earlier on that a license is a conditional privilege. It's conditional on not creating a nuisance. If you're creating a nuisance, then they'll have to take further measures to stop it. And they will.
Okay, thank you. So last question about the pre-12 o'clock hours. You said it's two time periods, two limits. And what sort of difference between the two are you suggesting? Presumably you're suggesting that up until 11 is allowable to be louder than the following hour.
We're certainly not looking at general club levels. The area which is designated for the club itself, for dancing, is the first floor level. So what we're looking at, and what we want for the period before 11 o'clock, is, I think, probably best described as like a live theme bath. So that's what we're looking at up until 11 o'clock. And then after 11 o'clock, we are going back to what is effectively a little bit more than background. This is the angle that, you know, that time is trying to create this, somewhere where people can actually go up, then have a conversation outside that period. It's not to sort of create, we're not sort of looking to replicate what's going on the first floor. That's what the first floor is for. This is I think I did specify some levels, and know something different. It's just a number. That's why I'm trying to sort of first line what we would hear. Possibly looking at something more like I say, like a bar, like 2 o'clock, and then music afterwards, but not whatever music is the main source of attraction for somebody which complex.
Now, just a clarification.
Please do.
There are certain levels acceptable generally before 11 and after 11, which is considered the appropriate time for everyone to sleep. There are different levels and we will meet both levels. So either before midnight, before 11, or after. We will not create a nuisance either way. If we do, we will take remedial action.
Okay, thank you. I suppose the last question I've got is about the maximum levels that you predicted of 59%. I mean, it's just under the World Health Organization maximums. I think you mentioned that a number of times that level will be reached over an 8-hour period.
It's actually above 60, and what the guidelines suggest is between 10 and 15 times. I can tell you that in the period that I mentioned between 12 and 1 o'clock, there were more than 60 students at that level, and that was based on basically taking 1 minute measurements. If I taken 10-second measurements, there would be 60 plus. It's not quite a time. It's not a traffic going. Police ambulance going there. People on the streets not connected with the car, but I was able to see that some people. There was obviously some activity outside the bar, but more people are coming down from the city centre, walking down through. So already the level in WHO is.
Okay, so just to confirm, you're saying that the current background levels of noise in the area already exceed these limits. Okay.
Councillor, the point of that is that us with an LA max of 59 decibels on the roof terrace, that will be drowned out by the existing noise. In other words, we won't add to the existing noise. We'll be well below it.
Yeah, okay. But just with my point of the question here is to try and understand how the noise will be heard by residents in the area. And you described yourself that they'll be able to hear it in space. I'm still trying to find out, trying to work out how they won't hear it in the local.
I think, yes, well, I was also being facetious for that particular example.
I understand that.
Explains why I never qualify as a statistician. What I meant was, it goes upwards, the noise. It doesn't go towards residents.
Okay. Thank you. I think that's the last of my questions. So, no, is there anything else you'd like to add, or Kat? No, Kat. Okay, thank you. In that case, we'll take some time to reach our determination. So ask members of the public and other officers to leave. Actually, I've just been reminded we've got Richard here. We've had Richard here all day and we haven't heard from him. And I would like to hear from Richard just basically to sum up your view now after hearing him here, and also the reason why you reached the conclusion yesterday or whatever it was.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. In reality, the objection was for abundance of caution, the 59 decibel in there, if we had the data for background levels, we could have said that it's got a cause effect. Without that data, we weren't able to say that cause effect. Additionally, further information on the 11 o'clock limit of this that would be set in conjunction with environmental protection team, and that would be set for people that we believe will be most affected. So it isn't necessarily the big one that's large road that will be most affected, even though the nearest noise sensitive residents, because they already have a high background level, but also people in Space Lane and the flats down there, which are visible from the roof terrace. But because they have a lower background level, they may actually be more affected than the residents of Space Lane who have noise affected along the lower acceptable.
Okay, thank you. So in summing up then, are you happy for the authority to grant this license from a public protection point of view?
From public protection point of view, everybody will have complaints made about this license from noise under the application as it is today.
Okay, thank you very much. I think if Mr. Grant one last opportunity to address the committee if you wish to, and then we'll make our determinations.
I know the words, if you wish to, please don't, so I won't.
Thank you. I made another note. There's a document that you supplied with your pack, and I'd already said that I was reading at the time. We had two such hearings yesterday. And I was unable to. If you would like me to read that before I make my determination, then I'm happy to do so. I prioritised what I read last night in terms of what I thought was most important.
I fully agree. There's a great deal, of course, of your time. No, I think it's helpful to summarise everything in the course of this hearing. So I don't invite you to read all 140 odd pages of our pack.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we'll break now for deliberation. I think we better have at least half an hour, so we'll ask you to come back not before 1:45.
Ready whenever you are.
Okay, thank you for waiting and welcome back to Norwich City Council's licensing subcommittee for the examination of licence application, Princewell, 24-26 Princewell Road, Attic. The committee has reached its determination that unanimous determination to grant the licence as presented with conditions. We've made a couple of tweaks to the conditions, and I'll ask Kat to read those out in a minute. And also, just refer to basically the way we reached our decision. We listened to all the evidence provided and the submissions from the applicant and also public protection officer at the end of the hearing, and concluded that there were no grounds to refuse this licence. So all conditions are to be included. We've received the composite set of conditions. Just a reference that any police public protection is being included in that, and I'm sure that it's comprehensive. I'll ask Kat to read out those additional ones, please.
Thank you, Chair. So the first one addresses a small alteration agreed during the discussion, and that's public safety. Strike, so a person during the first aid will be present, strike at the, and insert on both floors of the venue during trading. At 27, we go to the end of environmental health officer and add and to reflect an appropriate level both pre-2300 hours and post-2300 hours. At 29, the mobile number to contact the manager working when the premises are open will be available to residents who have objected to the grant of a new premises licence. And then inserted is, at the point of the venue opening, 1 week prior, a letter drop containing the mobile number to contact the manager will be made available to the residential addresses up to 100 metres from the premises. Each letter to include a reminder of the complaints procedure. These are some of the alteration.
Thank you. If you'd like confirmation of those, you're welcome to take a look at Kat's screen. So I'll just reiterate the process, and this is obviously quite a large venture, and we hope it will be successful. At the same time, we hope it won't cause any objectives, particularly the noise that we've heard about today. So it's important for the public to know that they can contact the council at any time with any noise complaints. Perhaps the first port of call will be the number that you'll provide, but members public can contact us at any time and ask for review if they have grounds to do so. So that concludes the meeting. After the same as 21 day process, following the date received the notification in due course. Do you have any questions or comments, please?
Just a comment, thank all the councillors for your careful consideration of today's test.
Thanks very much. The meeting is closed. Thanks to everyone for attending.